Hello, I'm State Representative John Hampton, and I'm also chairman of the MLK in Simsbury Celebration Committee. And Martin Luther King Day has come and gone, but his legacy lives on. And traditionally, we gather in January in Simsbury in person to celebrate his life, especially his time spent in Simsbury in the summers of 1944 and 47. But because of COVID and other restrictions, we couldn't gather, and we wanted to mark his life and all his contributions to our nation and to the world on a virtual gathering, if you will, so that we don't let too much time pass and not remember him and acknowledge all his great achievements on behalf of peace and justice and equality for all. So today, I wanted us to have a celebration that you can watch at home. After this, I ask you to go out and take meaningful action to honor Dr. King's life in meaningful ways, whether that's through volunteerism or running for office or advocacy in some way, and just to try and make the world a better place as he tried to do. So thrilled that you've joined us here today for our MLK and Simsbury celebration. And we have a great program lined up for you. I wanted to acknowledge the committee members that help us put together this event every year. Sarah Batchelder, Angela Griffin, Lisa Heavner, Elaine Lang, Ieke Scully, Rick Wagner, and Tara Willerup. They work so hard every year to make this event happen, and I hope and pray we can be together again next year in person. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome our first select woman, Wendy Mackstustis, who will offer some opening remarks.
Hey everyone, I'm Wendy Mackstustis, Simsbury's first Selectman. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I'm honored to be on the welcoming committee for this presentation to honor Dr. King's birthday. Yes, it was back on January 17th, but we shouldn't need an excuse to celebrate his life. And while we're at it, even though it's now March, I want to recognize that February was Black History Month. Learning about Black history does not need to stop on February 28th, but should continue all year long. Thank you to our host and founder of this event, State Rep John Hampton and his committee, and to the many volunteers who work to bring this event to life year after year. We have all been through a changing world since we met in person on January 17th, 2020 at First Church of Christ, Simsbury. In the recent 2 weeks, the 2-year pandemic finally seems to be slowing down. But we are now watching in horror as Ukraine fights for its democracy, and we are witness to the unfolding humanitarian crisis. It is a hard time for all of us. There has been a positive note during this time, though, as Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is named as President Biden's Supreme Court nominee, the first Black woman to be on the Supreme Court. With our town history that includes Martin Luther King living, working, and praying as a member of our community, we know he experienced what life could be like as a free man, without segregation, right here in Simsbury, as he and his classmates from Morehouse College were welcomed into our daily life. Simsbury is following through on our promise to embrace diversity, as we did when Dr. King was a farm worker here, and continue our focus on being an inclusive and welcoming committee to all. Our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, formerly known as the Spirit Council, is a dedicated group of volunteers who act as our diversity champions, working to foster awareness and take actions that engage our community. Our Board of Ed has an Equity Council, and last year hired a Director of Diversity and Equity. The town at large continues to work on housing initiatives, school programs, community policing, accessibility, and other ways to embrace people of all cultures and needs that choose to live, work, and play in Simsbury. So on that note, please enjoy the program, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to welcome all of you.
Thank you, Wendy. Our second reading, which will be read by Simsbury High School's Assistant Principal Vanessa Massiah, are selections from the commencement address for Oberlin College, delivered by Dr. King in June 1965.
Selections from the commencement address for Oberlin College by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., June 1965, Oberlin, Ohio. There is nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution. I'd like to suggest some of the things that we must do in order to remain awake and to achieve the proper mental attitudes and responses that the new situation demands. First, I'd like to say that we are challenged to achieve a world perspective. Anyone who feels that we can live in isolation today, anyone who feels that we can live without being concerned about other individuals and other nations is sleeping through a revolution. The world in which we live is geographically one. The great challenge now is to make it one in terms of brotherhood. All I'm saying is simply this, that all mankind is tied together. All life is interrelated, and we are all caught in an unescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. We are challenged to work passionately and unrelentingly to get rid of racial injustice in all its dimensions. Anyone who feels that our nation can survive half segregated and half integrated is sleeping through a revolution. The challenge before us today is to develop a coalition of conscience and get rid of this problem that has been one of the nagging and agonizing ills of our nation over the years. Racial injustice is still the Negro's burden and America's shame. We've made strides, to be sure. We have come a long, long way since the Negro was first brought to this nation as a slave in 1619. In the last decade, we have seen significant, but I would be dishonest with you this morning if I gave you the impression that we have come to the point where the problem is almost solved. Let nobody give you the impression that the problem of racial injustice will work itself out. Let nobody give you the impression that only time will solve the problem. That is a myth. Somewhere, we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals. Without this hard work, time becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. So we must help time and realize that the time is always right to do right. Let us stand up. Let us be a concerned generation. Let us remain awake through a great revolution. And we will speed up that great day when the American dream will become a reality. We, in the final analysis, can gain consolation from the fact that at least we've made strides in our struggle for peace and in our struggle for justice. We still have a long way to go, but at least we've made a creative beginning.
Thank you, Vanessa, for those beautiful words. And again, Dr. King's words are still so meaningful and powerful today as they were so many years ago. Our next musical selection is going to be sung by the Simsbury High School Gospel Choir, an amazing group of students.
Lord, my will
can see, we have incredible talent amongst our students in the Simsbury schools, and that doesn't happen by chance. One of our committee members is Angela Griffin. She is the K through 12 Director of Music and Performing Arts for Simsbury Schools. So I just wanted to acknowledge her contributions not only to this program, but to making Simsbury's music program, Simsbury Schools music program, one of the best in the state. Next, we have a beautiful musical selection under the direction of Colleen Thompson, Helen Walton, Gospel Choir Assistant Gertrude Banks, and Angela Griffin coordinators. This is performed by the Simsbury High School Gospel Choir. Again, such beautiful music. And thank you to Angela Griffin and to the students. And the parents must be so proud, as we are proud, of these amazing, talented youth who are paying tribute to Dr. King with us in this special ceremony. I am pleased to turn it over to Angela Griffin, who's going to introduce our keynote speaker.
Hello, my name is Angela Griffin. I am a member of the MLK Day in Simsbury Committee and the K-12 Director of Music and Performing Arts for the Simsbury Public School District. It is my distinct honor to introduce Dr. Tayarisha Batchelor as our keynote speaker. Dr. Tayarisha Batchelor is a Hartford, Connecticut native with a 26-year career in education. She holds a doctorate from the University of Connecticut and has received recognition for her efforts in urban school reform. She uses her research on cultural competence and teacher professional development as a framework for student success. Dr. Batchelor is a member of the NAACP, NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, and an advocate of the community school model. Dr. Batchelor's work extends beyond the urban educational setting. She has served as an instructor for the University of Connecticut's Pre-K Leadership Program, Teaching Theory and Practice for the program's Equity Module. Dr. Batchelor engages with community organizations to promote sustainable change. She is a mentor for women of color in the field of education. She sits on the board for Hartford Performs, a nonprofit arts integration organization that brings artists of diverse backgrounds into classrooms. In her current role as the Director of Equity and Access for Simsbury Public Schools, Dr. Batchelor engages in deep conversations about data, growth mindset, and success for all students. It is my distinct honor to present Dr. Tayarisha Batchelor.
For 35 years, we have celebrated the birthday of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We observe this day to remember him as a preacher, an educator, a great man, an activist, and a leader. He is one of the most quoted persons in our history. When I think about how I honor his dream, I think about a song that we sing in our house for everyone's birthday. Happy Birthday by Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder wrote this famous song and performed it during a rally he helped organize on the 15th of January in 1981. The rally was dedicated to Martin Luther King's birthday, and it was meant to show how much people wanted that day to become a national holiday. Today, when sung at birthday parties, people usually sing the chorus. It's more upbeat than the traditional happy birthday song. You can actually dance to it. But outside of the chorus are words for us to think about. And the whole day should be spent in full remembrance of those who lived and died for the oneness of all people. We know the key to unity of all people is in the dream that you had so long ago, that lives in all of the hearts of people that believe in unity. We'll make the dream become a reality. I know we will, because our hearts tell us so. Thank you. Thank you, Stevie Wonder, for reminding us that the dream lives in us. In order to make his dream a reality, we have to listen to our hearts and do the work together. The words unity and oneness from those lyrics coming from a person who walked with the Reverend Dr. King, who talked to him, who felt his immediate presence, gives me a sense of urgency that many of us need to feel. That call to action is out there, and many of us are doing the work, but are we doing it together? Are we doing this work in unity? And are we willing to walk in unity for the long haul? The Reverend Dr. King led people of all colors, all nationalities, and from all faiths, not just for a moment, not just for quick wins. When we think about the bus boycott, we realize and remember how long it actually lasted. It lasted for 382 long days. So today, while we are doing this work in unity, we have to do it with grit, patience, and grace. We can take examples from the Reverend Dr. King on how to give others grace. King experienced racism from an early age, and those events stayed with him and eventually brought him to a life of activism. I say this not to make light of what he endured or to make it sound easy, but to encourage us during difficult times to have the right attitude. He said, "Forgiveness is not an occasional act, it is a permanent attitude." I'm constantly checking my attitude. Do I have the right attitude for this work? I'm consistently asking myself, am I forgiving others? I'm reminding myself to forgive for intentional and unintentional acts that affect myself and others. We have to do this work so that children experience diversity and inclusion from an early age. All students need to experience representation of the whole world, not just the perimeter in which they live. We have an opportunity to guarantee experiences for all children that will profoundly change the trajectory of their lives. We open the world to our children when we allow them to see the world through different sets of eyes. The opportunity still exists for us to shape the minds and hearts of all people with a oneness powerful enough to host a room filled with us all, with all perspectives, many voices, various values, and even different beliefs. We can come together. I give credit to the organizations and people doing the work under the guise of different titles, programs, and institutions. But I also challenge them and myself to bring the work forward away from the silos in which it exists so that we can move in one direction together. My grandmother used to say, "Many hands make light work." I use that often as my hands are deep into this work today. We need many hands because the work is a heavy lift. Progress means getting our hands deep into this work, getting our hands messy at times. Stevie Wonder performed on a big concert on the first official Martin Luther King Jr. Day on the 20th of January in 1986. Wonder was the headlining performer. He said, "I had a vision of the Martin Luther King birthday as a national holiday. I mean, I saw it. I imagined it. I wrote about it because I imagined it and I saw it and I believed it. So I just kept that in my mind until it happened." I'm imagining.
Thank you, Dr. Batchelor, for your beautiful remarks. We're so honored to have you as part of our ceremony this year, and we're so grateful for your words, and so touching and so inspiring and so appropriate for this celebration of Dr. King's life. I hope you've enjoyed this special celebration of Dr. King and his life and his legacy and his time spent here in Simsbury. We're so proud to claim him as one of our own. In his writings, he refers to Simsbury as being pivotal in his calling to public service. And we are proud to call him one of our own, and proud to celebrate his life. I encourage you to visit the MLK Memorial that is at the Simsbury Free Library on Hot Meadow Street, and was put together by Simsbury students, and they fundraised all on their own. And the final product is just beautiful, and it's another great way to honor him in Simsbury and visit the memorial, especially as the weather gets warmer. And I wanted to just close by thanking all of our participants in this year's ceremony, and looking forward to next year where we can be in person again to celebrate his life. But I do encourage you to live his legacy through meaningful action and contributing back to our communities and to our society in some way, small way or large way. We all have a part to play in continuing his mission. And we're going to close with a special documentary on MLK and his life spent in Simsbury that was created in 2010 and produced solely by Simsbury High School students under the direction of Mr. Curtis from Simsbury High School. It was produced in 2010 and premiered in 2011. And it's a wonderful documentary, and I think you'll enjoy it as we conclude our time together at this special ceremony. So thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in 2023 back at First Church for MLK Day in Simsbury. Thank you so much.
In the summer of 2010, Mr. Rich Curtis and the Simsbury Free Library looked for students to do work on a special project. Upon research, they found that Martin Luther King Jr. spent 2 summers in Simsbury as a teenager. Fueled by their inquisitiveness, they comprised a documentary outlining his time here. As a result of the documentary, now we felt inspired to create a memorial, a physical manifestation, to continue to spread its message to our larger community.
Explain the parts of the memorial and their significance.
So when the students were making this memorial, it was really important to them that every part had a lot of meaning. So the words of the memorial are written on glass to make sure that Dr. King's message is really clear and open to the community. The granite on this memorial is from Atlanta, because that's where Martin Luther King grew up. If you can see here, there's a path going north to south, because that symbolizes Dr. King's journey. And also having the path itself is really important to the students, because they found it really impactful that Martin Luther King was our age when he was actually walking these streets. And finally, we have sandstone on the entrance markers, native to Connecticut, because that's where he visited.
Can you talk about MLK's time in Connecticut? What did he learn and experience in Connecticut?
Yeah, so Martin Luther King Jr. was here in the summers of 1944 and 1947 to pick tobacco on the Coleman Brothers farms here in Simsbury, along with fellow students from Morehouse College. Transferring train cars from the segregated ones of the Jim Crow South to the desegregated ones of the North on his way to Simsbury was really his first experience seeing white and black people living side by side without barriers. Being away from the segregated South gave him a new perspective on how the future could be, and we know from his ministry application that his time in Simsbury inspired him to serve in a way that he never had been before.
Why are you a part of this project? Why do you feel we should be called to service?
I joined this committee when I was a freshman, and now I'm a junior, and I've continued my involvement in this committee. I feel like it's important to continue to spread Martin Luther King's message, to inspire people to make a difference in their communities, especially at a time when there is a lot of injustice that people of color and other minorities face.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.